There's just so many great stories, and they're being lost. I've lived in the valley born and raised in San Luis, or born in Alamesa, raised in San Luis. And I am an art consultant. I've actually done a lot of things. Just I work for nonprofits. I've worked as a case manager at Department of Social Services. I've been a caretaker for several ill people, primarily in our family. but more than that, I've just been a journalist and a writer. Worked for the Valley Courier, worked for the Colorado Springs Gazette, worked for the Sieta and the Free Press in our local community. And I've also done some freelance writing for a few magazines, primarily art magazines, and done feature articles on different artists. A friend of mine in Taos actually did an Images of America book in Taos, and when I saw it at Brodsky Bookstore, I looked at it and I thought, oh, this would be really cool to do in San Luis. And so I kind of put it off for a whole year, and then I happened to go to a meeting at the Sand Dunes, and I love going through bookstores anyway, or gift shops. So I was looking through the gift shop at the Sand Dunes and saw that there was a book on the Sand Dunes. And I thought, okay, and I knew this particular gentleman had done one on La Vida. And so I thought, okay, he's moving into the valley. I better, apply and call the publisher and see about doing that. So I did, and they sent me an application, and I applied, and they accepted it. And so it was kind of my journey there. It was a little heartfelt too, because there was one woman I particularly wanted to interview and just kept putting it off. I knew she was ill, but I didn't realize she was as ill as she was. She's probably in her 80s. And I spoke to her. I didn't actually tape her or anything, but I did speak to her, and she told me some stories about her family. She gave me several photos that are in the book. And I had that interview with her in November, and she passed away in May. And even today, I look back at people that have passed away even within the past few months, and we've missed those stories, or they've either told me or someone else the story, and we just didn't really record it. And I think that's just so important, because that's a part of your history. And I think just history in general is just something that needs to be revered, and it needs to be respected, because that's definitely a part of who we are, no matter what culture or what country you're from. It's just a part of a legacy that you leave behind for your family or your children and your great-grandchildren. I got this email from this woman that bought the book, and then she sent me 4 or 5 images of her family. and she's like, I want my family to be remembered. And I felt like, okay, is this my job now to do that for other people, to say, okay, I can do this for you, or I can help you do this. I believe in the faith that people have, the arts, and I think even with the heritage area, I just wanted to be a part of something that I think is very extraordinary in the valley, and not just in the valley, but there's heritage areas all over the country. And I know their goal is just to focus on that preservation of culture, and that preservation of stories, and that preservation of buildings, and just the preservation of telling people this is who you are and this is where you came from. When they think of the town of San Luis, the oldest town of Colorado, what do you think about? Anybody?
I just remember the courthouse.
Is you remember the courthouse? Great, that's actually one of the images that I used in the book. A photo from 1913. It was a group of men from the SBMTU organization, and they all posed in front of the courthouse for that historic photograph. Anyone else?
The flour mill that used to be.
Yes. Yeah, El Molino. That's what they
Molino,
called it, El Molino. That actually was started in 1859 by St. Vrain and Easter Day. And then I think 20 years later, it was purchased by the Parrish family. And that family held the mill till the 1940s. There was a woman that we met that recently moved to San Luis that would tell a story, that told us a story about the mill when she was growing up. She's probably in her 70s, and her family would buy sacks of flour from the mill, and they were so poor that her mother would actually make clothing from the flour sacks. And it was interesting because there was another family in the community that owned the major grocery stores, and they lived in Cuba, which was more the suburb of San Luis, or technically the suburb of San Luis. And she said that her family had to make clothing. They couldn't actually buy it from the store, and she called them the Uptown Girls. That was kind of fun. It originally started with Conejos and Costilla counties, and then I think because of the logistics of including the sand dunes, they included Alamosa County. There were several of us, and I didn't specifically go to speak with Senator Ken Salazar. Well, at that time he was the Secretary of Interior, and John, and they actually were the ones that helped push the legislation through to get the heritage area. Part of the heritage area is to maintain the culture of the area, to document its history, and to give something back to the community, because what the heritage area specifically does is they get funding from the federal government to give back to the community. They have a grant cycle that nonprofits can apply to. We did one on murals. The church in Antonito did a grant application for sustainability of language and culture. I think the language is foremost, because if that's lost, then you kind of lose a whole identity of people. I think for a lot of people in the valley, not specifically San Luis, but a lot of Hispanic people in the valley, Spanish was their first language. I know my own grandmother did not speak English till she was older, and we had a hard time communicating with her sometimes when we were younger. And then we had to learn Spanish just to communicate with her. I know my husband's first language was Spanish. I think there was a time when the faith was the primary focus of the community more than anything. People got married, they got buried, they got baptized, they had weddings. I mean, everything was, the church was their main focal point. Everything was centered around the church. Even the artwork was centered around the church. And I think that has slowly changed. I don't know if that's because people are more transient or because there's other faiths that have been assimilated into the community versus the Catholic faith, which that was initially primarily the main faith that the Spaniards brought up with them. But there's just been a change, and I don't know if that's been for the better. because I think you still need to. There was a time when every single child used to do May crowning, and that would be something to look forward to versus, going to a basketball game in a small community. Everybody loves to go to basketball games every Saturday, or there's something to do, and you do that as a community, or you'd go to all the wrestling matches, or if there was a dance and someone got married and everyone in town was invited, and now it's just a little more separated.
Unique to southern Colorado and northern New Mexico, the acequias, an irrigation system, were designed in a way to guarantee agricultural prosperity. This access to communal land and water is not only a necessity, but also an ancestral right that benefits all users. It sustains a way of life and preserves a culture in this highly isolated desert region.
The farming and the agriculture was primarily a big focus, and a lot of those people, their families, they move away, or their children or grandchildren don't want to continue that lifestyle. I mean, it's a good lifestyle, and I think that, especially now, a lot of the food back then, and even now, if you plant food in the valley, it's organically grown, it's grass-fed beef, it's something that is in demand. But unless you make that commitment to work that land and to make that lifestyle work for you, it's not something that people want to work towards unless you love to do that. I think the main struggle is economics, because there isn't a lot of industry there. There isn't a lot of infrastructure in the community to offer jobs. The school and the county are probably the biggest employers in the community, and that's, even then, there's just a limited amount of jobs. And if you want to have a good paying job, you usually have to leave to go to school, and sometimes those people might intentionally want to come back and give something back to the community, but it's always difficult to do that. They get married or move on or find work elsewhere. And we moved away for a while, and we came back to work. My husband came back to work on the shrine, and a part of me was like my kids. You kind of just, and my best friends all moved away and went to college, and I went to college when I came back, but it wasn't the same. I felt like I wanted to be somewhere different, where you feel like you're not in your own community, like you kind of were making it somewhere else. But when I came back, I think I had a greater appreciation, even though I wasn't much older, but a greater appreciation for who I was and for my parents and what they did. And then, of course, my mom got ill, so it was very special for me to be there to help her and be there with her during that time, because she was everything to me. I guess everybody needs to have a home to come home to, or a place to call home.